Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
But I think part of it was like being brought up with like faith and just this idea that if you are a child, you're a child of God, you know, and you're like a creation and you're beautiful and you're worthy, and just really being raised to believe that and to have an environment that really reflected that and opportunities to kind of see that being nurtured and to have my own light protected for as long as I was able to have it protected in that situation. And so, yeah, that's again like why I do the work that I do now, and that's why I just try to live the personal life that I do now, because of the things and the love that was poured into me as a child, and just that belief that we all are special in our own ways. Like, I know it sounds kind of like corny and hokey or whatever, but I don't know, I think that's real.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jane Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA.
Hi there, this is Jake Eberly, the producer of the Bonus Babies podcast, and today Jane Amelia speaks with Dr. Noah Nash. Dr. Nash is a foster care alum from very early childhood, as well as an educator and a creative. He got a master's degree from LMU in recording arts from the film and television department, but then he got into leadership because he was inspired by Zaid Gale, the CEO of Peace for Kids. Here's Noah Nash.
Hey, I'm here with Dr. Noah Nash. Hi, Dr. Nash. Dr. Noah Nash. I just love saying your name, sorry. Hi.
It's fine, Janie, and Noah is fine, for the record.
Okay, good. Thanks for being on the Bonus Babies podcast and for making this happen tonight. There's been a couple snafus, but we're going to get through it. And I'm anxious for people to hear about you and your journey. So I'm just going to get into it. Tell me a little bit about who you are, how you're raised.
Well, who I am is I am a 32-year-old adult in the world, which feels weird. It feels like a baby adult is what the 30s feel like.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I feel like I'm 12.
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
Yeah.
It's just like you're like a second life, kind of, in a weird way.
Totally.
So it's exciting. And how I was raised was very interesting. I feel like I was raised on the road as a young person in foster care. I entered the system in the early 90s, so got to see a lot. Just a really interesting time.
Yeah. How old were you, right? You were 2.
About 2 years old, yeah, when I entered foster care. And then left as a teen.
Right. So you were all alone? Did you have any siblings?
I had a set of siblings, but we got broken up in the system.
Wow.
As was pretty much customary at the time.
Yeah, and it does indeed still happen, unfortunately, which is just not good at all. So why did you end up in foster care? What was the scenario?
Well, the way that I kind of phrase it in a nutshell is my parents were preoccupied. I don't know if your listeners remember what was happening in the 90s in Los Angeles, but it wasn't a great time in certain communities. And my parents were, I guess, kind of like victims in the whole situation as far as drugs and just domestic violence and that kind of chaotic underbelly of the 90s. So that's kind of what was going on with my family. And it was, again, just kind of more customary to just separate families as opposed to offer resources.
That's right. Yes, that's absolutely true. That's still true, right? So do you remember any of that? What were your first memories? Do you have a sense of that you were in somebody else's home that wasn't the home of your family of origin?
Definitely. I remember the day going into my first long-term foster home, and that was kind of interesting. It was like this, like really she was kind of scary a little bit, but like this scary older lady kind of just like pulled up in the car and was like, all right, you're like coming to my house now. And that's kind of how foster care is. It's just like you find out what's going on like as it goes on and everyone else knows what's like happening, but like you don't, in a weird way. So it's like
Right.
everyone's kind of watching the movie of your life and you're like the last to know despite being the main character. And so one of my first kind of memories was like this older lady pulling up in a car, and I was in a home with a bunch of other kids, and it kind of felt almost like a holding pen, even though it was a home. And this lady was like, "All right, you're coming with me," and she seemed like kind of angry at me. But I think as an adult now, I realized that she was angry at the conditions actually that she was taking me from, which is just like a totally different perspective on it. And I knew she wasn't mad at me because of what she didn't know me. Like I was just a kid, and I knew she cared about me because of the way that she treated me once I got to her home, where I lived for almost a decade, for about like 7 years. And so that was like one of my first kind of memories where I realized like, like something kind of maybe not usual is going on. And then the fact that the home was also just like very like diverse within the home. So then there was also like, this is a unique experience where an adult just kind of pulls up and says, hey, we're going to like live here now. And then like everyone in the house is very different. So
But were you in other foster homes as well, or this is the one that you landed in and remember best? Like, didn't you have several placements before
I
that?
did, yeah. So there were a bunch when I was like really small and didn't really know what was going on that I'll just like never remember, just like little kind of one-offs or whatever that I've kind of heard about, but like don't remember firsthand. And then that was like the first kind of home that I remember like entering this home and leaving this home, as like a placement. So it was like the first like placement that I remember. And then after that, I had, that was my only long-term placement. So I was there for like 7 or 8 years. And then from there, it was like a bunch of movement.
Right. And have you had a chance to look at your case file?
Briefly, yeah. So I actually have as an adult, just one time briefly. And funny enough, I actually drove by the building where the records are actually housed on the way here. So I kind of was reminiscing about that for a moment. But yeah, it's,
Ah,
I describe the room as like, if anyone's ever read Harry Potter, I think it's book 5, The Order of the Phoenix, where he goes into that big kind of underground layer with like the really high shelves with all the orbs on them that have like the information in them. That's kind of how the Hall of Records is, where like a young person who's been in foster care where their files live. It's like these huge shelves just full of paper from decades, like decades and decades of paper. And depending on how long you've been in the system or how long ago you aged out, that's like where your box is. And it's crazy because like when I went to go get mine, it was just a whole like back and forth as far as like paperwork. And then when I actually got my file, because there are so many siblings and like all of our siblings, like all of our files is like one big blob. It was like a cart of papers that they rolled over. And so I was kind of on a little bit of a schedule, but yeah, so I got to sit with them for like 45 minutes.
so you weren't able to take a copy with you, and because it's a record of you. You're not able to do that?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they charge you per sheet. So like I think it was like 10 cents per sheet or something like that, which is like, again, like you said, insane, because it's like I'm paying for my own biography, like my data, my information, like my life story in a sense. And obviously it's not the whole story because it's like the story that was written about you from people,
Yeah.
that like may have
Yeah,
seen
it's
you
not the whole
once.
story. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yep.
it's like a part of the story, but it's a big part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's the inaccuracies that make it funny. Like one of the things I learned looking at my file was at one point, all of my siblings and I's birthdays were recorded as the same day. It was like all recorded as January 1st.
That's like a typical example of all the mistakes that are in the files. I find that absolutely shocking. I've seen that with the CASA kiddos with whom I work.
Mhm.
In one report, they'll have so many mistakes. The kid's name is wrong, the birth date is wrong, the parents'
Yeah,
names are wrong, the streets are wrong. It's all wrong. So how can you believe any of it? I don't even know.
exactly. If you couldn't get something as big as the street right, then like how is anything else right? Like let alone your observations or like opinions of your observations.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So that first family, you said they set up a good foundation for you. So, will you talk to me about that? What was that like?
Definitely. Well, one of the kind of earliest, just pivotal moments for me that I remember in that home was my foster mom being very just like kind of tough on me, you know? And like as a kid, you feel like, why are you picking on me kind of when people are tough on you? But then you get older and you realize, like, oh no, it's because they're holding you to a standard and they're teaching you to hold yourself to a standard. And
Ah,
so one of those moments came when, well, I guess I have to kind of rewind a little bit. When I was in this home, it seemed kind of like magical because it was like one of the best foster homes, if not the best foster home I was ever in. And it was like one of the first. And then after that, it just everything I kind of reverse back and compare it to that home,
hmm.
even though it's like really one of a kind. So I guess just to kind of set it up, it's like one of the most important things was I was just simply allowed to be a kid. And I think that really has to be said in the foster care context because it's like so punitive, like down to when
Yes.
you wake up, like how you wake up, like how you move, how you put your bowl in the sink after breakfast. Like everything is just so regulated and observed. And, you know, it's like there's just so many opportunities to do something wrong. And so for me, one of the most important parts of this first foster home was that I was just literally allowed to be a kid. My foster parents were older. They were in their 60s when they got me. And so I think they'd also just kind of been seasoned and like had raised their own kids and like were raising grandkids who were my age or, you know, like helping raise and rear up grandkids who are my age. So they'd just already seen everything. They'd already fostered like over 60 kids by the time I was in the home.
Wow.
So they'd just seen a lot. And so I think it helped. And I had like a lot of energy, and most of the kids in the home had some kind of special need on top of, which like most kids in foster care do have some kind of like special need or accommodation. But all of us in the home had like some kind of special need or accommodation, and they were able to like meet all of our needs and make sure that we were, you know, just like developing as we needed to, and just being able to be a kid.
How do you feel about those people now?
Well, they both recently passed away, so that's definitely just been like a cavity in life, you know, when you lose people who've had such a big impact on you.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been
Mm.
tough, but also kind of beautiful a little bit because you're able to like appreciate having ever known them. So that's kind of how I think about them now.
Right. And why didn't you end up staying with them? Because you said you were with them for about a decade.
Mhm.
And because wasn't your grandfather was in the picture too, right? A little
My
bit?
grandmother, yeah, and she lived in the next county over. And what's cool is she was actually my. Is it paternal on your dad's side?
It is paternal on your dad's side. Yeah.
Yeah, so my
Mhm.
paternal grandmother was actually friends with this foster mom, and they were like the same age. And so, as a kid, I would visit my grandma, but then I would live with
Mm.
this in this foster home. So it was like kind of the best of both worlds a little bit because I don't think my grandma just had the resources or even like I don't want to say the structure, but like really just the resources to take care of me because I had a lot of energy and it was just like, you know, one, you know, single person versus like a family structure, you know what I'm saying, with just like
Yes. Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so then the reason I left that home was to actually be closer with another sibling in foster care who got adopted. And that placement didn't work out. I won't go too much into the details of that because that just like leaches into, you know, it's not all my business. So, you know, I don't want to like air out my little sister's
Yes.
business. But yeah, she basically
Sure,
got
sure,
adopted
sure.
into another family and I never got adopted. I got like literally labeled unadoptable was what was like put on my file basically. It was just like crazy because it's like,
Wow.
dang, it's like y'all got kids out here that you're calling lemons basically. Like, but even lemon cars get sold.
Yeah, well, really? And then so how old were you then?
I was about 9 or 10.
Okay, so you said that this first family that gave you a good foundation and you realized that later as well, right? But they were musical too. Didn't you say that there was like a lot of stuff going on in the house? Tell me about that.
Exactly. Yeah. So there was it was just like a house with a lot of toys and tools and just like very tactile. And as a kid, you know, a young person kind of developing your orientation to the world, it's like really cool to be able to put your hands on an organ and like just experience that or like stand next to a cello and like look up at the neck, you know, and it's like something out of this world, just like crazy. Or my foster dad was a carpenter and also like built buildings. Like he supervised really big buildings being built like across California, really around the world as a missionary. But when I was a kid, he was working primarily in like Southern and Northern California. And so even just like small things like being able to see a chair get built from like scraps to chair, you know, and just like that kind of orientation
that's
to this is
cool.
how
That's
things
really
work.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like we had
Mm-hmm.
plants and bushes and produce that we would grow. Like I grew up with an avocado tree, which like was really the biggest privilege, honestly. It was like free avocados and having an avocado tree. So like other kids would bring their teachers like apples and I would see that in TV and stuff. So I'd bring my teachers avocados to school because we would like give out avocados. That was like our thing. So it was just like a very kind of quirky maker community a little bit. And again, just like very diverse. It was like intergenerational because you had like babies and then you had seniors and then you had their kids and their grandkids. And like in our foster home, we had like black kids, white kids, Asian kids, like kids question mark, like we don't know what this kid like literally it was like everyone was there. So it was really cool. And just like I didn't realize that like the world wasn't necessarily like the world is like that, but it's not necessarily easy, if that makes any sense. And so that was like
Yeah.
also just an interesting way to be raised. And especially like even just now, just like how much like just division, you know, like there is. And I'm just like, that's like, I'm so grateful I was kind of raised how I was. Cause it's like, I know things are different because I've seen just multiple sides of the tracks.
Hey, so what happened to you when you left that house?
So when I left there, I went to live in the home with my little sister. And it didn't work out. And so then from there, that's when I started, they call it bouncing around, which is when
Bouncing
a kid just
around,
like
yeah.
bouncing around. Yeah. So that's like kind of foster care jargon that I realize a lot of people don't, they're like, what? Like, what does that even mean? Bouncing around? Like racquetball? It's like, no, a young person bouncing around.
Right. Because you were unadoptable, apparently.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. According to the people making judgments on my case.
How'd you end up in school? Because you've had a really good education, right? How did that work for you? Because it's pretty hard to do that if you're bouncing around.
Exactly. And so that again goes back to my first home. So I was there like before I started school. And I remember as soon as Head Start opened up, my foster mom was like, yep, you got a lot of energy. Like we're definitely dumping you in Head Start. And it was funny because when I got
went to
there,
Head
I
Start.
was right.
Yeah.
Like Head Start is lit. Like I
love Head Start.
Right. It was really, really cool. And what was funny about it though, the irony was like even in Head Start, just the culture of the home that I was in was like very much like everyone works on something. Like everyone, like no matter what your ability is, no matter what your limitations may be, like everybody's working on something. And so before I got to Head Start, I was already able to read because my foster parents very much nurtured that in me at an early age of like, we read in this house and I would always want to go to the library. And we'd go to the library literally at least once a week, at least sometimes twice a week. And I would just like burn through books. And so that's also a big part of what set up my educational foundation was like one, having the space to play and explore and like and interact with things in a tactile way, but also like a home with books in it, time to read, space to read, encouragement to read, access to like the library, access to an adult or an adults that were like willing and able to get me down to the library. So just like really, really nurturing that early on. And so after I did Head Start and kind of like blew through that, I jumped into kindergarten, which was cool. And then really started like reading vivaciously then. And so then by the time I got into first grade, I did all the work of like a year in like a day. And so the second day of class, the first grade teachers were just like, what? Like, what the heck? Like, what is like, what? And then they sent me home with a letter that was like, hey, do you want to go to the second? Because they asked me like, do you want to just go to the classroom with the second graders and start doing work with them? And I was like, yeah, because the kids were like, I wasn't like, these kids are slow, but I was just like, what do you mean y'all aren't reading yet? Like, what? Like, what do you do at home? Like, you're not reading? Like, what are you doing? And because that's what I was doing at home was like interacting with things and like learning and asking questions and getting into stuff and just like bugging everybody. And yeah, so then I was second grade, like right the first week of first grade, I was in a second grade class and everyone thought I was weird. And this is like kind of a funny aside.
They thought you were weird, but the truth is you were just awesome.
They thought I was super weird.
You sound like
yeah,
really
I was
awesome.
very weird. And I thought I was cool too. And then I think also because now there's like a lot more representation around like multiracial families and adoption and foster care. But back in the 90s, people were just very rude. It was just like, is that your dad? Is that your parent? You know what I mean? And it was just like the culture was just different. And I don't want to say less accepting, but there
Yeah.
was like a lot more mysteriousness and like even more stigma, I would say, around multiracial families. And so I think also because my foster parents were older and like, you know, I would appear black, they would appear white, then it was just like, what? Like, this is extra weird. And you're younger than us and you're taller than us. Like, this is weird. And then again, a funny aside was like in second grade, my foster family, we also had like animals. And so we had like little snapping turtles and there was like feral cats that we would take care of that were outside cats. And then there was a brief period where we had pigs. And there was a period where we had pigs, and that was when I got to second grade. And it was like show and tell or something at school. And I was like, oh, bet, like I'm bringing pigs for sure. And I asked the teacher, I was like, can I bring my
Wow.
pig? She was like, yeah. And she thought I meant stuffed pig because like who has pigs, right? Like in like
No, who has a
the
real
suburbs.
pig? Right.
Exactly. Like, especially like, why would you have a pig? Like, and so then I got back home and I told my folks, I was like, yeah, can you bring my pig on Wednesday? And they were like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. They're like, you asked your teacher. I was like, yeah. And they were like, okay. And so then my pop walked the pig to school and he pops up at the time I told him, like 10 a.m. or whatever time I told him. And he pulls up with the pig and the teacher's jaw dropped like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose my job. And then the pig ran around the classroom and all my peers got on their chairs scared and they looked at me like even more freaked out.
What was the pig's name? Do you remember?
We had two. So we had Madison and Brady at two different times. And Madison got really big. And so they told me that she went to live on a farm, which I think we all know what that means. And then Brady just got kind of mean. And so I don't really know what happened to Brady, but he didn't attack me because we were cool, but he would like charge at other people. And so that was just like a liability waiting to happen. So they had to get rid of Brady.
This sounds like a fascinating household, really. And I'm sure, as you've said, the reason why you are who you are, in spite of incredible adversities, because there were some good things that happened. So that's kind of wonderful. But I want to ask you about the courts, because you were talking about what happens to kids who are in the dependency system and the courts. You started attending when you were only in middle school, right?
Exactly. Like the first time that I really remember being in court and like being engaged as, you know, like a person was about middle school.
Right. And what did that feel like? What was it like?
It was kind of weird. I felt like I got cheated a little bit because I was just like, you mean other kids grew up like coming here and having this outlet and ability to like get help navigating their case and getting resources and kind of like going over the heads of their social workers a little bit. Like I didn't know that was a possibility. Like I didn't know we had an buds person until I aged out. Sorry. So now every time I do a podcast or something around foster care, I always try to plug the buds person because like everyone should know about that, but especially kids in foster care.
Yeah, and obviously, as well, you didn't have a CASA, right?
And CASA, exactly. And then everyone should know about CASA as well. And I don't believe I ever had a CASA.
No, it would probably be in your case files, but it's also true that any kid can ask for a CASA. Now, they don't know they can ask for a CASA, but any kid can. And if a kid asks, they really try to assign them. Unfortunately, there aren't that many of us. As you know, at any one time, there's roughly 35,000 kids in the LA system. There was 600 CASAs when I started, then it went up to 9, and I think might be 1,500 now, which would be great, but there just aren't enough. And the truth is, each kid actually needs a CASA because each kid needs a caring adult, whether it's a CASA or somebody else. And the important thing about,
and I'd even say multiples.
Yeah, of course. And you know, I've mentioned this on the show before, but I remember there was this wake up call that happened to me when I was first involved in my kids' care, and it was a CFT meeting, which is like a caregiver and also family meeting. And I was there, and I looked around the room, and there were 12 people in that room that were being paid to be in that room. I was the only one who wasn't paid. I was the only volunteer. They were all there on the state's dime, on the kids' dime, on our dime, supposedly looking out for this child for, to help with services or care or placement. And, if it weren't for that kid, none of them would have a job. And I found that just super disturbing.
And that's the mechanism that I think is really important that kind of cuts through just so many issues is like the follow the money line.
File the money. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you felt you were able to speak in court? Like, did the judge talk to you? Like, do you remember that and say, how are you? Like, what's going on? That happened?
Court was always a blur, to be honest. It just moves very, very fast. And
Yeah.
it's very much like hurry up and wait,
Yeah. Hurry up and wait.
which I know show business people can appreciate that. Yeah, the hurry up and wait, where it's like rush, rush, rush. And then like you're sitting on your hands for hours and it's rush, rush, rush. And then it's done.
Right. Did you know who was who? Like, who was your attorney? Who was the judge? Who was a social worker? Well, a social worker wasn't there, but who was I found out my first day in court that the social workers have an attorney that representing them. And I was like, really? Well, why? And then, everybody has an attorney.
Yeah.
Then they just argue with each other and things get put in place or not,
Yeah. Or delayed or stayed.
and it's like, it just keeps on getting delayed. I know that you are intent on changing the system. What might that look like to you? I mean, you don't need to tell me all of it because I know you probably have a lot of balls in the air about how it could be, but just an overview. How do you feel? How could it be better?
Oh, that's such a big question.
If you want to only answer a little piece of it, that's totally fine. It's a big, it's like kind of like what is life kind of question. So, just answer what you care to.
Yeah, I think for me, the answer kind of morphs a little bit every single day. And I kind of oscillate between like it's a systemic thing, like we got to change the system, and then like also we got to change the way that we do business as like individuals, as families, as neighborhoods, because it's also us. Like what we see is a reflection of us, and vice versa. So as far as changing the system, it's tricky. I mean, I think one of the biggest kind of and cheapest ways to really change the way that we see and do foster care is change the way that we understand it and also the stories that we tell. So I really appreciate this platform and your work here because it also is going to take more than like, it's not a one shot and done thing. It's going to take consistency. So like whatever lane a person decides to jump in who is trying to change the system, it's like, I think consistency over the long term is going to like be the way to do that. So whether it's like you're a really great, whether you, decide to be a really consistent, awesome foster parent for like 10, 20, 30, 40 years, or even just to one kid. I think it's consistency over time and then doing the thing that you really feel passionate about. So it's like, I don't know, it's really easy to kind of, to become kind of fatalistic and think like, wow, so the problem is so big, like nothing is going to change. I kind of just got to take care of me. And then there's also the problem is so big, I have to like throw myself onto everything and just like be a martyr. And it's really about finding the kind of sweet spot of the thing that you can do and want to do for the long term and do consistently. Because even if it feels small in the process, these little things add up. And that was something that I'm just feel very privileged and blessed to have experienced in like in the homes that I was in. And because there was the home I was in for almost a decade, and there were a bunch of little things that I've watered over time that I now realize are big things because I've been watering them for so long. But the same can be said for some of the other homes that I was in that maybe I wasn't in them that long, but that doesn't mean that they were necessarily horrible, but that experience still kind of shaped me. And I think the same goes for the outside of the system is like you can spend a little bit of time for a long time or a long time one time, but I think whatever you decide to do, just like do the thing that you really want to do.
Have you thought about either adopting or fostering a kid or doing respite care or anything like that?
I'm happy you asked that. Right now, just with the square footage in my apartment, definitely not. But
Yeah.
potentially in the future, just because like space and real estate and whatnot. But I would love to be involved with some kind of like housing project that either help kids who are in the system or help kids who are aging out of the system to be able to live somewhere that's not just safe, but that's awesome. That they actually want to be, that they can thrive and like really set themselves up to be successful in the next leg of life. And just this week, it's actually a really big week for me personally because sorry, I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of phrase this on the podcast to protect these people's privacy. But two of the kids that I grew up with in my first foster home are now adults that have just basically special needs, and I'm in the process since our foster parents passed away of becoming, I guess, just like more legally someone in their life who like has their back. And so I'm actually becoming a legal conservator.
Wow. Oh, good on you.
Yeah, so not a parent or foster parent, but something kind of similar. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing to do, and very, very valuable, very important, very needed. And good on you for considering that as an option for you, because not a lot of people would. They'd say, "Nah, I've been through a lot myself, and I can't think about that right now." But that's not what you're doing.
No, and it's yeah, I don't know. It's just again, it's like very important to me, and again, it kind of goes into the equation of like what is activism, what is leadership, and it really is. Again, it comes down to like to you, and it's like it is very personal. Like it's not always the things that are going to get you on like the Forbes 30 under 30, but it's the things that really resonate and that you feel great doing. And so that's kind of just been my Northern Star. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice image, really. So tell me a little bit about Peace for Kids and your Rock and Move podcast, because it's really important too. You're giving a voice to people with a lived foster care experience, right?
Yes. So Peace for Kids is turning 25, which is exciting.
Yay!
And the party is tomorrow. And I don't know if y'all have heard or haven't heard of Peace for Kids, but definitely check out their website at p4kids.org. Peaceforkids.org. Yeah, it's peaceforkids.org. Peace4kids.org.
That's
and
right.
again,
You got
they're
it. You got it.
a nonprofit based in Watts, California. And I met the founder, Zaid, when I was a wee tot in high school. And they've been an invaluable community resource for me as I was getting ready to age out of foster care. And then once I aged out of foster care, that's actually like ironically when I got really involved with Peace for Kids was when I was like a young adult / the adult that I am today. And Rock Move is really cool because it's kind of an extension of Peace for Kids, but it's basically its own organization that's really focused on incubating voices of young people who've experienced foster care. And so we have a number of initiatives under that umbrella. One of those is a podcast. So it's kind of meta being on a podcast, talking about a podcast, but there it is. It's 2023. So there's the Peace for Kids Rock Move podcast. We also have a children's book that we published that's available right now under a buy one, give one campaign. And the book is called The Pointless Forest. It's written
and it's beautiful. I've seen it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book, and it makes a great gift. It also is a great story to just for everyone to read, especially if you ever felt different or like a weirdo, which is something that a lot of people in foster care can kind of relate to, just like standing out and maybe not understanding why. So, yeah, a lot of things in the books, and you're probably not, like by the time you hear this, the 25th anniversary reunion will probably be past, but that's happening in a couple days, and I'll see you there, Janie. Right?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be there all day, I think, too. And then there's a party at night as well. It's going to be fun and long, and we'll be dragging by the end of it, but that's okay. Okay, so
it's going to be a long day. Yeah,
it's going to be a long day. So please talk to me about your interests. I know you're very musical. You're into computers, electronics. What was your education like, and how is that showing up now? Your interests, your talent, and your schooling?
That's a good question. Education is definitely like its own kind of beast. That's like a story of my life. I've been to, like when I was in foster care, I went to one of the top charter schools in the country for a year. And that was pretty early on. And then a few years later, I went to one of the worst charter schools in the country.
Wow.
So like exactly in the same trajectory. So I've seen like the best and the worst of what public and private education can offer. When I was like around the time I met Peace for Kids, I applied for a scholarship, which was kind of a pie in the sky, I guess. I don't want to say ask, but a pie in the sky award as far as like getting it. And I got it. And so that unlocked some more doors for me as well. And so what happened? After I left high school, I worked as a roadie on the road, which I heard that's like a derogatory term nowadays, which it doesn't offend me, but it's basically like an audio engineer that works on the road.
Right, right.
And I did that for a summer before I aged out. And shout out to the courts, actually. That was pretty cool because I had to get special permission to be able to do that because I was technically a ward of the court, even though because I skipped a grade, I was younger. And so my attorney made that happen. I had a mentor who also was not a CASA, but just someone who was a business owner who owns a business in the industry and was like, and actually it's funny because they met me at the, because they made a donation to the Boys and Girls Club where Peace for Kids is housed. And so that's how we met. And then they were like, oh, you want to study audio engineering? Like I run a business, da, da, da. And then whenever I get a business card, I follow up. And so I followed up and she was like, okay, like, what are you doing? Oh, you're getting ready to age out. And then she called me back in like a couple of weeks and was like, do you want to go to New Jersey? And I was like, yeah. And so then a few weeks after I graduated high school, like literally 2 weeks later, I was on a plane going to New Jersey and was there on the East Coast for the summer. And then I flew back in August, at the end of August, and moved into the dorms like 6 hours later at LMU. And at LMU, I studied recording arts technology at the School of Film and Television for 4 years. And that was a
Great
really,
school.
really, really
Great
cool
school.
experience. Yeah, great school, really cool experience. I studied a lot. Like I was taking like 16 to 18 units a semester, and full time is like 12 units. So I was like just on a roll. I was taking summer classes sometimes and interning. And by my third year, I was like 20 years old. I couldn't even buy a beer. And my advisor was like, you can leave, right? You can graduate. And I was like, I'd already skipped a grade. So I wasn't trying to like be 20 years old with a bachelor's. Like, I don't know. It just didn't make any sense. So I was like, no, I'll do like my fourth year, like whatever. And so then I don't know. It was really great because I just learned a lot. I went in with a bunch of just questions about the world and like just wanting to understand like why things kind of were the way they were. And as a young person in foster care, it was also just really telling like, why aren't there more people at LMU who've experienced foster care? Like, why aren't there more people here that have lived in Compton or went to schools like I went to in high school or middle school? Like I don't know, it just a lot of questions kind of opened up. And that's what kind of sparked me to want to study education leadership for graduate school. And so after I was kind of studying audio engineering and making films and recording bands, I was like, this is cool. But I kept thinking about what is the thing that wouldn't happen if I wasn't working on it. And then I took a year and I worked actually in the courts, in the children's courts. So kind of near, I guess CASA's in the children's courts now. But I spent a year working in the children's courts as an advocate, specifically around AB 12, which is extended foster care. And that was an interesting time.
I thought about that. I'm so glad you're talking about that. Yeah, please explain.
Because I wasn't old enough. I'm sorry, I was too old. I was too old to take advantage, and so I was in that like funny spot of like you're 18, you're on your own. You're 18, you're on your own, and then like if I had been a year older, then I would have had like thousands of dollars and like aid and resources and stuff that just wasn't available because of legislation. And so I thought that was also just really interesting. And then the fact that I ended up being on the implementation side for a year also, again, just really colored how I see education and just the politics of information and culture and policy and how these things shape out, and really how it's so easy for good intentions to get shunted, I guess, in the planning and implementation sides. And education, did my master's and then continued on to do my doctorate. And then the thread that kind of connected my master's to my doctorate was technology and computer science and emerging technologies.
Oh, cool. Okay, but now I want please, I would like you to go back, but explain to us what AB 12 is, because most people don't even think about that. They don't know about it.
So AB 12 is Assembly Bill 12, which is a California bill, which basically says, yes, we want to take advantage of the Fostering Connections to Success Act, which was a federal act that was signed into law in 2008, I want to say. And so because of the way the law works, it's like a very old machine. The federal law was signed into law in like 2008, but it wasn't until 2010 that California said, yes, we want that federal money. And then it was like 2012 that it actually started getting implemented and put on the books. And like, we're going to start cutting these checks and doing these things. And that was coincidentally the year that I graduated at undergrad.
because up until that time, kids aged out at 18, no matter what. And then now, because of AB 12 and funding that could be allocated, kids now have the opportunity to continue until they're 21 with certain conditions. It's not like a blanket. They have to either be in school or working part-time, right?
It's not a blanket, but I think also it's important to remember that the intent is to deliver the services while setting up the young people to actually be successful after they age out, because
That's so well said. Thank you. Yeah, because that's why it's important, because look at, I mean, just look at any kid who's 18, whether they've been in care or not. They're not ready to go out into the world and do their own thing and get a car and insurance and an apartment and be in school and without any support whatsoever. So why should we expect kids who have been in foster care to be able to do that? It's crazy. So I think that the fact that now there's the opportunity for kids to get at least a little bit more help as long as they can has been so valuable for many kids. But it sounds like what you're saying, you were like in between that, so you never had that chance.
exactly, I never was able to do that. And what was funny too, just because again the culture of foster care was so different in the 90s and 2000s, it was like, because it was just like you're on your own, da 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 da. And I remember like walking on the campus at LMU in the Sunken Gardens with Zaid my freshman year, and AB 12 was on like the brink of implementation and being legit law. And he was like, "Would you stay in foster care if you could?" And I was like, "Heck nah, like get me as far away from the system, because da 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 da." And then 4 years in the future,
Yeah.
I'm like telling kids, like almost begging them, like, "Listen, if I could take advantage of this, like I would, like I know. Get away from the system. Like you don't want to be having to deal with a social worker and all these things, but like this is what this means. Like this is what these resources mean when you put them in the context of what you're trying to do. So leverage them to that end and stop looking at it as like you're still a foster kid, and look at it as like you have this little bit of help, like this little bit of rope to help you."
Yeah, a little bit of help. It's not even a lot of help. It's just a little help for a little longer. Really.
Exactly. It's such a quick window of time, especially just in life. Like 18 to 21 is just such a snap.
Yeah. So will you tell me, how do you feel about Zaid Gale?
I think it's crazy that he's been at the helm of Peace for Kids for 25 years. Like, it just doesn't feel right. Like I think I need to actually double check the math before Saturday. Nah, Zaid is amazing, man. He's like, I think the city of LA would be different without him. And that's saying a lot, just considering the magnitude and the scope of LA. Like, yeah, so it's pretty crazy. And Zaid is one of the reasons why I also really wanted to continue on with my education and study education leadership, was because of his leadership and like just growing up and kind of watching him and the way that he moves and, you know, just the way that he leads and puts pieces together and just does so very humbly. And sometimes I try to gas him up a little bit and encourage him to like document and share your wins, because that's how, like, you know, people can understand what you're doing and understand your impact.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't even know what to expect for the next 25 years, but I'm just kind of in awe of what he's been able to stoke in the very real, living, constantly growing ecosystem of people, not just in LA, but like across the world, that have a new kind of view and take on young people in foster care, and also like their impact on the system. And that's something else that I really appreciate about Peace for Kids, is like, you don't have to do a ton to make a really big impact. And oftentimes, if you just find the people who are doing a lot and do a little bit to help them, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge.
But it takes the humility of being like, okay, who's doing this better than me, or who's really doing the good work in this space. And so that's one thing, again, that I just really appreciate about Zaid, is like, he's really been 10 toes in the dirt in the foster care community. And yeah, there aren't many people that you could say that about.
So you're solo now, right? You're not in love with anybody? You're not in a relationship?
I'm solo dolo.
Have you ever been in love?
Wow, that's a big
Have you ever been in love?
That's a huge question.
Okay, I'm going to tell you right now.
I feel in love every day.
You're in love every day. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. See, I'm asking you that because actually I never fell in love until I was an old lady. I used to pour through relationships. I went from one man to another. There was one, what was the expression? There was one at bat, one on deck, and one in the hole or whatever. And it wasn't until I met Daryl that something landed. So, I know that that's not true for most people, but that was true for me. But that's not true for you. You're in love every day.
I mean, and like, I don't know, it's like, it's small things. Like romance is everywhere if that's your orientation.
That's so carefully said. That's so well said. Okay, I want to ask you something that I ask all my guests, and if you can dig deep for this, please. So, what is the one thing that no one would ever know about you unless you told them?
I think there's two. I think the fact that I feel weird saying this on the podcast because it is like such a personal thing about me, but I am like very romantic. But yeah, and again, it's just kind of colors how I see the world. But it's not something I necessarily wear on my sleeve. The other thing, and it feels like kind of an extension of the same, is I really love animals.
Okay, so
like if you gave me a topic to talk about, yeah.
So you are a romantic and you love animals.
I do. I love animals, and I really love spending time with kids. But yeah, I really love animals.
Okay, I think I get what you're saying is that because you kind of come off, people can't see you, but you can come off like an academic, like pretty, you're so smart, you speak so well on so many topics, you're very confident, but you're saying that also underneath that, you're truly a romantic.
Yes, I'm basically softer than people would maybe expect when you see me on the street. But oddly enough, and that's why I think I like animals and kids, is because like animals and kids, we vibe. Like they don't have the kind of prejudices that people have.
Yeah.
Or like full grown, like adults sometimes. So I think that's also part of it, is like we kind of just like vibe past the preconceived notions.
Hey, is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything come to mind? I mean, we could talk for a long time, but I just want to see if there's anything else that you want to add as a button to what we've already spoken about.
I'm racking my mind. I wish I could like take a question from someone, like a question from a listener. But
question from a listener. Well, how about your friend or Jake? Do they have a question for you?
Oh,
they're
that's a good
question. In the room. They can.
Jake is in the hallway, and Godiva is live streaming. Do either of y'all
He's
have a
live
question?
streaming.
I mean, I'll take a question from either of y'all. If you have one or something.
I hate to admit, I do have a question.
Wait, what is it?
Yeah. It's like around like hope and optimism, like how to maintain that.
How to maintain optimism?
Yeah, like
hope
as you go through, because like that's a big part of like social and emotional learning and just growing up from like being a kid to like full grown adult. Like I think it's really important, like how you've been maintaining that.
That's a good question. How do you maintain your very optimistic attitude and view, unless you're just hiding, deep, deep, deep pain underneath all the time, which we probably have. We all have it. But how do you maintain? You have a super sunny nature.
Again, I think it goes back to just how I was raised and the home I was in. And it's funny that you use the word sunny and sunny nature. Because the home I was in, they were missionaries. So they were fairly religious people. And the children's church that I grew up going to was called Light Factory, funny enough. And that's where I got my start doing audio, like AV stuff. Because again, I had a lot of energy. And so we'd be at church and I just, a lot of energy, right? Like it's just hard to sit still for like on a Sunday. And so they had this thing in the Light Factory, which was like a puppet show. And the children's pastor, Pastor Howie, was like this, like a Muppet, like a human Muppet. But like he would do this puppet show at the end of like every children's sermon. And if you were a kid, you could go up and like be one of the puppets. And like he would always end the skit with like they would make a really gross shake and put all these like And it was like a mythical shake. Like he'd just like do the sound effect of the blender, but it'd be like Pepto-Bismol, like chocolate milk, like all this gross stuff, and then mayonnaise and blend it up and blah, blah, blah. And like there was only so many puppets. Like every kid couldn't be a puppet every single week. And so eventually I was just looking around like, okay, there's got to be something else to do. And so there was front of house. And then the dude that was running front of house was like a low-key guy. And I was like, hey, can I help? You know what I'm saying? Is there something I could do? And he was like, yeah, you can like push this button. Like when I give you the cue, push this button. And that's how I got started in sound. I was like a super small kid. And then from there, just like my love of computers and all that stuff just was a stone, like a snowball that kept getting bigger. But I think part of it was like being brought up with like faith and just this idea that if you are a child, you're a child of God, you know, and you're like a creation and you're beautiful and you're worthy. And just really being raised to believe that and to have an environment that really reflected that and opportunities to kind of see that being nurtured and to have my own light protected for as long as I was able to have it protected in that situation. And so, yeah, that's again like why I do the work that I do now, and that's why I just try to live the personal life that I do now because of the things and the love that was poured into me as a child, and just that belief that we all are special in our own ways. Like, I know it sounds kind of like corny and hokey or whatever, but I don't know. I think that's real.
I love that. We all are special. We all are. So thank you very much, Dr. Noah Nash. You're kind of fabulous.
Thank you.
I really appreciate being able to talk to you for even for a minute. And I'm going to hang out with you tomorrow.
Sorry, and there's a dog. Okay, and then the other thing is animals. So I summoned a dog. The magic of animals. Can I say hi?
That's
to your
January.
Dog?
Yeah.
She wants to say hi to you. Your dog's name is January.
Jake's dog, January.
That's my birth month. That's why. Hello, January. Hello. Whoa. And yeah, and animals too. It's like you can't ever be
she's a great dog.
upset with an animal around. Yeah. So shout out to animals. That's crazy. We just summoned January.
All right. Listen, you have a good night. You're funny. Okay. And please give a smooch to January for me. Okay.
I will. I'm going to go say hi.
Okay. All right. You take care, sir. Bye.
All right, JD. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. I've loved it. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah, for sharing your story with us. It's clear that the support you had in your youth with your foster parents and your church helped you build the confidence to get the level of education that you achieved, which, in the end, has given you the opportunity to give back to the community. I'm sure you'll make a huge difference. And my dog, January, was particularly happy to meet you. So, thank you very much. Our next guest is Steve Pemberton. He was taken from his mother at the age of 3 and had a terrifying existence with a foster family that seriously abused him. And his only refuge was a box of books that he got from a stranger. But this story does have a good ending. Inspired by those books, he escaped from that family and started a new life, the life he dreamed of. He is now the author of several best-selling books, including the memoir, A Chance in the World, An Orphan Boy, A Mysterious Past, and How He Found a Place Called Home. So join us next week for Steve Pemberton. Thanks for listening, and be well. If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposto. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at bonusbabies.org. See you next time.